think the PA is already on, right? I don't have to hit that button. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Time being 5:51, I'd like to call the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting for June 7th to order. A note to residents. All citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. The meetings are also be live streamed by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast 11 and Verizon Channel 29. Recordings of meetings are available on Franklin TV's Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel. I think they added that in. Additionally,
We did. Thank you. We did.
looks like excellent. Additionally, in an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The call-in number is 1-929-205-6099. The meeting ID number is 833-4805-8388, and then you must press the pound number. So welcome, everyone. Let's just jump right into the agenda. First thing on the agenda is the New Style property update. Do we go to you, Jamie, or do we bring Brian up?
Brian is definitely coming up. I just want to do a quick lead in.
Yeah.
This is now not embargoed information, so this is public. Brian's going to go through the grant. I just want everybody on the PDC to remember that there is $100,000 from ARPA funds that is going towards the same project. So ultimately, Brian was successful in getting a $500,000 grant, so that ARPA funds helped our application.
Okay.
And so now, Brian, if I'm not mistaken, we now have $600,000 to spend. And Brian, you're going to tell us what it's going to be spent on. And before we all get a chance, Brian, thank you and congratulations. After writing grants for 10 to 15 years and having a hard time getting it done, the people watching at home or on Zoom, I hope, come away with the idea that our staff never give up. And certainly there may be more money at the federal level available for brownfields, but Brian, congratulations and thank you for all of your hard work for a really, really long set of years to get this money. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Brian.
Yeah. I just want to, well, thank you.
We'll snap our fingers like Kobe. That's really exciting. Thank you
Yeah,
for not giving
yeah.
up. I mean, I
Well-
think we all do that, right? We can't give up.
Yeah, that's true. I just want to thank Amy and also the consultant working with us. Actually, it was very valuable in getting this done right. And so yes, we have $500,000. We have the beginning of next fiscal year on July 1st.
Okay.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. It's a federal fiscal year, so it's October 1st. We have about 3 or 4 years actually to get the project done, $500,000. So it's not like it's going to get done immediately.
Okay, that's good.
The work being done now is we're utilizing the $100,000 right now on licensed site professionals, and we're going to need a structural engineer because our building's attached to the adjacent building on site. There's all kinds of stuff. So the consultants that we're working with now are going to be working on this probably until that $100,000 is gone, and it'll be right into a portion of the $500,000 grant for the remainder of the project. So this is the first time that we've been able to just hey, I see that we can actually just keep this project going, because the money we spent a lot of money, the federal government has, and the state spent money on us, but this is the first time we probably will finish the project because we have enough money to actually get it cleaned up and done.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I said before I retire, so if it's a 3-4 year project, then that'll be about right. So so I think it's great. We're going to need a lot of a little bit from the town staff here and there, but most of it is going to be consultants working for us who will be working with us to do procurement documents, to get contractors in, different kinds of, we'll need demolition contractors, we'll need people to put wells in, we'll need the people that do the soil sampling and all of it. So it's going to be a lot of different companies involved in the end on that project. And the hope is that it'll be worth more than $5 when it's done. Right now, it's not worth anything in the condition that it's in.
Right.
But at least it'll be clean enough to do something with at that point, whether it's a parking lot or a road to somewhere else or something, I don't know. But we're on our way, so it's good. We're already doing the contracting with the contract documents with the federal government right now. So this is going to be something that be on my to-do list every week going forward until it's done. So
Yeah.
we're doing good. So
That's really amazing. I think we, ever since I've been on the council, it's one of those things, nobody ever wants to talk about New Style, on the New Style property, and everybody goes, no, I don't want to talk about it. But thank you so much for just continuing to make sure that we have a solution to this, because we know we can't give up. And I think that's great, the 3 or 4 years, and it's going to be clean.
no,
That's good. That's
clean
really
as
clean as it can get, right? But that's
right,
really
that's
good.
right,
That's
yeah,
really good.
yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian? No?
Okay.
Any snap fingers or claps or thanks or
No,
anything like that? Thank you, Amy, too. That's wonderful. Okay, so let's move on to, that's really exciting. I'm like, can that be the end of the night for me?
No, we've got more good
Can I go
stuff.
home now?
We've got more goals to accomplish.
All right. Just joking. Okay, so let's go to agenda item number 2, GR5 zoning amendment proposal. We have a staff memo and draft zoning amendment here in front of us. Jamie, do you want to say anything first, or do we?
Just through you, Madam Chair, I just think, I think we've talked about this before, but Brian's going to go through the proposal. It's modest, but I think we've talked about this before, and it sounded like the EDC was pretty supportive of these changes. And so Brian's going to go through the bylaw change. Brian?
Yeah, I did write kind of like looking at it now, it's a little lengthy on the memo, but
Okay.
it's really, there's 2 changes on this, the first of the bylaws. It's bylaw amendment 23898. And that makes a couple of changes, a couple of amendments in attachment 9, which is a schedule of lot, area, frontage, yard, and height requirements, which we know, that this committee knows pretty well by now.
Yeah, I'll carry her with me. Yeah.
The first change, which relates directly to the recent zoning amendments that we've had. We changed the density of housing and things of that nature. And when you put together what can go on a lot now for, say, a multifamily housing, it doesn't, the residential units either have to be small, or you have to have less parking than is required by the bylaw, or a combination of both. So we're looking at the impervious coverage that is currently allowed for structures only. Right now, we only allow 30% of a lot. And this is the densest of the residential zones that we have. So the intent of it's very similar, of course, to the well, it's the same as residential 4, and it's not that far off from 3. So the thought would give it a little bit more flexibility by saying, yeah, you can have, 35% say on housing or the actual building itself. And in addition, and one thing that comes in with a lot of developers, the state, they want more space for parking. So it's not unreasonable on the general residential 5 to up to an additional 10% for the parking than currently is allowed now. So the whole impervious surface on a lot cannot be more than 45%, where it's 35% now. That is what is being proposed right now. The other change, which is something that relates also to some of the bylaw amendments that we had recently, is that we created a definition, or we put in the chart, a three-family. We divided multifamily into two. So a three-family and then a four and above. And we also, we're thinking that I'm going to read it here. Residential uses must observe requirements of general residential 5 district for residential use buildings only in the C1 zoning district. Because we don't want, if you have a residential 3 area and you have a really dense development going up next to it, you want to be able to set back a little bit more, things of that nature. But if your multifamily development is only going to be a 3-family, then maybe it doesn't have to be set back all that much more than a 2-family.
Right,
Right?
right.
So that, therefore, what it would be is we would exempt that requirement for
For
the 3
three
families in that zoning district.
Okay.
So those are the 2 simple changes. Whether either one of these changes make a big difference or not, I don't know, but I think it'll make at least some difference on some of the potential development that could happen, where, especially on impervious, it's tough to get, where say you can have up to 1 unit per 2250 or whatever the case, square feet. And if you want 1,000 square foot housing units in a specific building, it really is, it ends up being a big building. It's forcing people to say, I got to go 4 floors, all these things. But it also it forces people to say, I can only give you half as many parking spaces that the planning board actually wants, because they don't have enough impervious coverage for parking. So I think both of those fixes, if you will, I consider them fixes, would be beneficial to the people in are building houses and other facilities for that matter. I mean, it's applied to other things also. Anything that goes into a general residential 5, housing is the thing, but
Right.
it is actually, if somebody gets a special permit for another use or something, they would have a little bit more room for impervious coverage also, not just residential. So, if you have any questions, I can.
I thank you, Brian, for, I mean, we've been discussing this impervious coverage issue for a while now. I think in the Franklin for All project, for the recommendations, some of the things that came back were about, they did mention that this was really too restrictive, that we should open it up a little bit, make the maximum amount higher. I believe that the recommendation was 50% maximum. I'm just wondering what the difference would be and why you picked 45 over 50.
Okay. So the 50% was for probably a 40R development. If they went with that, I think is what the issue was. And that was the first recommendation, development of 40R bylaws. This does not relate to that specific bylaw. First of all, we haven't developed it, but second of all, this is for all 40R, for throughout the whole area. So that's the only difference. Whether we go 45 or 50%, it doesn't really matter a huge amount. But when you get over 50 and everything, you end up getting a less green, if you will, neighborhood, and this is a residential neighborhood. So the more impervious coverage you put in there, the more paving you have, more building you have, the denser the development, which has its benefits, but at the same time, those are the reasons there are limitations and regulation to begin with. You're controlling the impervious is a very important thing for one thing. But other dimensions are just important. But this one, I think, the reason I chose this is that issue is something that I think will make a difference. Whether you go with 50% or not, I don't think it matters. But I don't recommend going higher
than
that.
50.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone else have questions for Brian? Colby?
Yeah, I mean, you touched upon my main question. I was wondering, I'm assuming you didn't have this, and I meant to ask you sort of in advance, but it strikes me as likely that most of, maybe most, at least a high percentage of the homes that are currently in GR5 as being greater than even 45% coverage. Yeah, you don't happen to have.
No, actually, we started running that assessment about 2 years ago, or before MAPC even got involved. But a lot of the lots are small.
Yeah.
So if you have a small lot and a big house, and it's 50 or 100 years old, before any of this became relevant, a lot of them are non-conforming, without doubt.
Right.
But a lot of the lots that are not non-conforming are big enough to support a multifamily or small multifamily development or whatever. And if you cover the whole lot with impervious coverage, you're changing that section of your neighborhood. So it's the new development that is the kicker. I mean, if somebody wanted to had right now, if they were at 51%, say they wanted to do something that was 51%, and you are at 50% maximum impervious, I mean, there are ways to get that 1% down a little bit to develop the site. Or they can go for a variance and actually ask, hey, this is what I want to do, regulations have stopped me from doing that, and they could go for a variance. So I think there's plenty of ways around things. It gives, if you want a variance, it gives the ZBA the authority to say yes or no, it's a good idea or bad idea, and I don't think you should do it, or you should do it. And then it goes to the planning board, and they go through their process that way. So
It strikes me as strange that I think General Residential 5, we just did a walking tour and had a whole bunch of people walking through, and mostly through GR5. And most of the remarks, and I think that this would be true of most people in Franklin, is that it's one of the prettiest and one of our best residential neighborhoods. They're a little tighter together, but super walkable, and still plenty of room for street trees and good green coverage. So it seems, I get that they're, we're calling them pre-existing non-conforming, but it seems weird that we would make it illegal to rebuild something that we enjoy, or even make it difficult. Make them have to need further evidence for why they're able to go greater. Anyway, I say this all. I started with, when I first started this process, I put together a table, and as people kept talking, I sort of adjusted the table, and I got to what I thought GR5, based on what's currently there and what we seem to like, while still absolutely not having it be all buildings, still retaining that green, was to be 50% coverage of a building and 60% with parking. I think I still feel that way. Just looking at the properties that are currently there, I want to say, Councilor Sheridan, I want to say your property is above 50 and 60%. Yeah. And it's a beautiful home in a nice walkable space. So it just seems weird to be more restrictive than the type of development that we mostly agree is pretty strong. So I would motion to amend that we change 35 for structures to 50 and structures plus paving to 60.
Second.
Could we discuss before you vote on it? I just wanted to make sure that we could.
I mean, we just agree with the amendment and then discuss it?
Well,
Or second to discuss?
He can make a motion to amend, but we can always open that up to discussion right now.
All right, let's open it up to discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Could I make a comment through the chair on that?
absolutely.
If you had a 3-acre parcel and you can do up to 50% impervious. You've just created a humongous building in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And I understand that may never happen, but what you may end up with is if somebody combined a few parcels together, they would end up with what you have at the end of, right where the Dean Ave, those apartments in the middle of some of the nicer neighborhoods you're talking about. So I'm not saying it will happen, I'm saying by regulating it in a certain way that you're opening up for that potential. So therefore, it is not my job to say what you can and cannot do, it's my job to say the reasons that we do what we're doing in the zoning is to not limit a person to the point where they can't do anything with their property, but if they're gonna do something that's what half the neighborhood's gonna be up against, and at least half the neighborhood would wanna not see a 3-story structure that is, 50,000 square foot footprint on the ground. I mean, people are not gonna see that. They're not gonna wanna see that. They're gonna want in their residential neighborhood a residential structure. And that's the reasoning for limiting this. Now, if that were in the downtown commercial zone, or even in the C1 zone, we've zoned for that kind of density, more density than that, actually. And therefore, people living there already know that, hey, my next door neighbor could sell someday and put in a substantial structure there. They know that already. General Residential 5 neighborhood is, as you're saying, is one of the nicer neighborhoods, and it's a beautiful place. And one of the reasons it's still a beautiful place is we have limited the density up until this point. And we also previously they created multifamily housing special permit only before we got to this point, now that we changed that, where you could have up to 1 per 1,000 square foot, so 43 on 1 acre of land, right? 43 units. And that kind of density, but it was special permit. That's why we ended up changing the density issue and allowing up to a certain scale by right and then special permit afterward.
Right, yep.
Right? So they're all tied together, and if you change this to be allowing impervious, it's almost like if you want to allow a denser housing than 1 per 2250, the way it is now. If you want to allow something bigger than that, you need a special permit. If you want increased impervious beyond what we allow now, it's the same idea. I mean, if we allow everybody to do it, then it's going to be a situation where your neighborhood changes fairly quickly. And that's the reason we were suggesting the limitation.
Okay.
If you go up to 50%, it's not a whole lot different than 45, but then you get into 60 and then people want to go for a variance so they can put 75 in there. And before you know it, you end up with a really, really dense area.
Okay, all right, Jamie, you want to add
You mentioned,
something?
just really quickly to Brian's point, he hit most of it. I think it's, I think this is where the community character piece comes in, and it's not as if any house that, I agree with Councilor Frangillo. Yes, like Councilor Sheridan's property or any other of those are desirable homes. They obviously fit within the character. We're not saying that that's not what some people want. My concern is when I hear impervious surface, I think of stormwater, I think of recharge, I think of other issues. And I think Brian kind of stole my point right at the end. Well, now we're going to go to variance for 100. And once you get a variance for 75, 80, 85, well, now you're urbanizing a district that, doesn't completely have that character. If it was downtown commercial or maybe some other side streets and it was purely that, maybe it would be different, right? But you're talking about some pretty large swaths of zoning areas well outside the downtown that I think it would be maybe the master plan committee can consider a few of these things of maybe separating some of the larger parts of GR5 so that maybe some of these issues don't get conflated, right? Because if you're talking about all the way down Pond Street and some rural roads, you know, that could change, I think that's what Brian's pointing out, is like, that could really change the character of a neighborhood.
Yeah, Kobe, you still have the floor.
Thank you. No, thank you. I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it struck me as sort of the two main arguments against going that high were that you might get more units per acre, but that's a separate piece that we've already agreed upon, and that you might ask for a variance for more, but a variance for more doesn't negate allowing, you know, a certain amount. So both of those seem like outside the question of, do we enjoy the types of buildings that are there and want them, want more of them to be allowed? We can handle density and variances in separate spaces. That's where they are handled. Yeah, sorry,
Are you done?
thank you.
Are you done? Okay. Counselor Sheridan?
Chair, for you, so, what apartments in Dean College, Dean Street, are you thinking of? I'm just trying to picture them.
Station.
Oh, Stage
Station
117, okay.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, I understand the worry, and our goal here is not to make the GR5 area, those
Okay.
beautiful downtown downtown areas that everybody loves. We don't want it to become something that people don't like, right? And so I understand what you're saying. I just, and it's just good to hear you say those kind of things, because we're asking questions because we need to hear that feedback, I think, right, Councilor Fungillo?
Certainly.
And I agree that, we talk about stormwater, but we have these really cool things that collect all the water for people, and so maybe we don't have to worry too much about having too much impervious coverage. I personally don't like I don't like parking lots. I think people should just make a cool house and then maybe a small parking lot. I don't, but it's important for us to understand why you pick these numbers. And I thank you for explaining it well, and I get it, I understand. You have anything else?
No, I'm fine with Brian's suggestion.
Okay,
I'd be happy, we have a second, I'd be happy to make a friendly to do 50, 55, or,
I was thinking 40, 50, but,
Even if you did 45, 50.
45, 55?
Right. Flip a
45,
coin.
55?
Can we do
Going
both?
once, going twice.
Can we do 50, 55 and allow them to, if they want to do a small parking lot, because either way, if you're going to have a 10% parking lot, then you're going to need that variance. But if you want a 50% building and a small lot,
I feel like I'm worried about going over 50. And I would say that maybe it would be 40, 50 would be
I was thinking 40.
what I would think would be
Yeah.
a reasonable thing.
Yep,
that
40.
gets you to 45, 55?
I got 40, 50. So,
How about-
I'll do a friendly to 45, 55, and we'll let us all vote on that.
second.
Well, not
Okay,
a discussion.
All right, so wait a minute, let me write it down, 45 to 55. Is that what you,
Yeah.
and then Patrick seconded?
Yep.
All right, any discussions on this? No? No, anything else? Okay, let us vote on that then. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, 3-1. And I like what Brian has added to the multifamily residential with 3 housing units to protect that is really a good
Are we
idea.
discussing that piece now?
Yeah, do you want
Is
to?
that's all part of the same?
It's
Yeah.
the part, same with, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry, I was just thinking through, I was trying to understand. So this is saying that within C1, we're gonna treat residential only as if they're in GR5. We're gonna treat single-family homes or duplexes as if they're in GR5.
No, well, as of this minute, with your zoning, all right, if you wanted to put in a multifamily housing development of any type in C1, if it's adjacent to a residential district, it has to be, it does take the residential 5 dimensions, all right?
The-
So that's it limitates, that's great, nice word, I like that one. But it limits what you can do on it, and it's been on several properties, since I've been here, that has taken place. It's a little more challenging to position the buildings and things like that, but it does protect the adjacent residential properties from somebody putting a big building up, then looking, on their third floor, they're looking right down at the person's pool. I mean, it happens, so. But if somebody wanted to put a 3-family multifamily, now that we have that option, and we would eliminate those additional, the regulations, so they would go with the C1 regulations for the 3-family. It would still be, for the 4-family and above, nothing would change.
Got it.
Okay? All right.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. No, I think that's.
Anyone else have a comment?
Nope.
All right. Do we want to vote that too? Do we
Yeah.
have to vote that one?
that's all.
I think it's just one vote, Madam Chair.
Okay,
But it's as amended.
As amended, yep.
as amended.
This one's right.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. Awesome. Thank you, Brian, so much
Thank you.
for all your work on this.
Motion. Excuse me, we're gonna move this right to the council.
Oh,
Yeah, the final vote would be to move it on to the
yeah,
full town
let's
council.
have a vote to send this as amended to the full council.
Motion to move zoning bylaw amendment 23-898 to full council, as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Unanimous move to the full council. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, let us go over the cannabis overlay district. Housekeeping. Or does anybody in the audience have any questions for Brian? Oh. Okay, let's move on to number 3. I'm sure Brian's going to take this one, or Jamie, you want to take it first?
I'll take this news. So through you, Madam Chair, I just want to emphasize one thing really quickly. Ultimately, this is really a house cleaning item of
Okay.
of taking out some parcels, and Brian's laid them out on the map about which parcels should be taken out with an X. So for example, on attachment 2, map A, we've taken out the parcels around the YMCA, just to illustrate it.
Yep.
And the staff and the tech review team did review with the town attorney and everybody, all of the staff recommendations. We are all comfortable with these. They are all updated. And these represent essentially a few additional parcels that have been added that
Yeah.
when looking at the changes from some businesses, like some businesses moved that had prohibitions before, so we've added in the ones that are most commercially viable.
Okay.
So the proposal before you to move on to the council we don't need to do any language bylaw changes. It's literally just a house cleaning of the map. If you have any questions on any of the other parcels, the staff and we've all gone through them. We can probably answer them. Some of them that are not on here, either abut residential zoning districts, residences, other properties within, several hundred feet where we can't have them near a church or a school, particularly
Right.
on Grove Street. So that's really the quickest summary and the easiest summary. At the bottom of the memo,
Yeah.
there was, which is not a part of these proposals, just to be clear to everybody in the public, folks watching at home. From an economic development standpoint, down the road, or maybe the master plan committee, or others may want to look at if there are other issues. One of the topics that came up, just to illustrate, was like across the street. We were here looking at a vacant storefront
Right.
and thinking like, well, are there more opportunities, right? And so the staff weren't necessarily comfortable or in unison saying, oh, definitely here. Thank you, Councilor Frangillo, also for empowering us to come up with ideas. But I think a conversation point may be down the road, you know, we all believe the industry has kind of hit its plateau. And now we're into another phase of the market dynamics, which are some are going to go out of business, some are going to get in trouble,
Yeah.
and the demand may rise in other areas. Medical, for example, clearly has a huge growth factor in it, but with the federal prohibition, can't do that. So doctors and physicians, and so we're never going to get there soon. So
Right.
just some other things to kind of think about. But if the council ever wanted to have a discussion on that, that's another discussion aside from the house cleaning item. And
Okay.
certainly you feel free to talk about it tonight or at another meeting.
All right,
But-
thank you, Jamie. And the fact that the price of cannabis has gone down.
How's it?
It's at the lowest ever right now in Massachusetts.
It is.
So their profits probably, the profits went up in smoke, he said. He's like trying to be funny. So it could be, we might actually see the loss of one of our facilities, or not a facility, but our
Retail stores.
retail store,
Yeah.
right? Because the cost is way down. So-
Yeah.
But
And really quickly on that, to that point though, one of the things that's been a huge success in Franklin is because the bylaw we got through early and the 3% cannabis excise tax was like the first in the state, we actually ended up attracting, you know, two really, really great retail operations in Netta and Boterra, and we also had PharmaCann, which was also
Yeah.
very, very good in other parts of the state, but they kind of went, wait, there's too much here, we gotta go somewhere else.
right.
And, you know, as we've talked offline, it's been a minor success story of business development from new growth, which we just did a podcast, and maybe we should have talked about it on Monday.
Yeah.
But Netta's, you know, parent companies have bought several major buildings, done renovations to them, and are staffing their employees here. A lot of those employees live in Franklin. They've bought houses in Franklin. They've
Yep.
renovated houses in Franklin, right? Like, all of that is new growth.
Yep.
And that's good tax base. So we're very lucky and very proactive, and we got a couple of really, really great businesses to come here. And so we, you know, I think there's a success story, and maybe that's where it's plateaued, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. So we go to Brian?
I think I summarized it, but Brian may
Okay.
want to add.
You did a great job.
Couldn't have done it better yourself, Brian?
No, not even close.
Does someone in the audience have a question for?
I do, should I go up?
Yeah. Name and address, please.
Pat Ridgway, 15 Winding Brook Road, and I also own a building on Upper Union Street. Am I asking him?
It depends on what it is. But
So-
you just ask the question and we'll decide who gets to
So
answer it.
I'm concerned about Upper Union Street because I run a business up there. It's a
Okay.
retail business, an auto repair shop. Right next door, so it's the map C. And then you
Okay.
can see the three added properties on Upper Union Street. One of them is right next door to my business and building. And the first one is a hotel. So
Correct.
a little confused as to why we would have a marijuana district overlay on a hotel. But, and I understand it doesn't mean it's gonna happen just because you overlay there, but that concerns me. The next property is probably owned by 15 or 20 people. It's a condominium, industrial condominium project. They've got parking restrictions, they've got deed restrictions. Another one that confuses me. And then probably the most viable one is right next door to me, which I don't want a marijuana grow or sale facility right next door to my auto repair shop. I guess that's just my opinion and my choice, but that one's probably the most viable, but the other two confuse me, and I don't know if you can answer why they're there, why they're on this map. I understand this is just preliminary, but does anyone know why we would put one on a hotel?
Through
Yeah,
through the chair.
Brian will answer that for you.
I can
Thanks.
answer, and that, it's basically, if you read the zoning bylaw section on marijuana uses, okay? It describes where you can have these type facilities, what type they are and where they can go. So it is, I don't have it, I could open it up and explain to you, but it's all industrial zone property to the west or south, 495, that is not within a certain distance of certain things, churches, schools, daycare, things of that nature, okay? And when you plot it out on the map, when you do that, when you're looking at each individual parcel, okay, is this parcel within 500 feet or 300 feet? That's what you're looking at, okay? It is,
Union, that's why these two spots.
right, exactly, exactly. We at least 200 feet away from it. So that's what comes out when we do an assessment, is what you have on the map here. If there are really good reasons that I don't know of that shouldn't be on the map, then the council can have them taken off. The planning board can make suggestions, or property owners obviously can give input to this. I know that right now, you're not gonna have a retail marijuana facility in that hotel. But we don't know 15 years from now what's gonna happen on that specific property. So for zoning purposes, these are uses that are allowed by special permit in certain areas. So if somebody redevelops their site, the one next to the hotel, for instance, if they, I don't know. The hotel, I hope they don't never do, but they get burned down too. I mean, you don't really know what the future brings on any specific parcel. So when we're looking at zoning, we're looking at the description of the bylaw essentially.
Okay, so.
I was gonna
Yeah.
let Jamie add to that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you very much. So just for the property owner's edification, so this doesn't necessarily mean a retail store. It's also like seltzer manufacturers, like other manufacturing of goods, products, whatever else is out there in the spectrum of products. It doesn't even necessarily mean a grow facility. But obviously, you know, Franklin is on the leading edge of this. There's been a lot of properties. I'm sure you know that the Dario property, was just a supply store. Now it's a full operation place. It doesn't necessarily mean as the industry's growing, it's going to be a retail or this, that, or the other thing. The bylaw encompasses all of those uses for manufacturing. And I just wanted to mention, like in terms of uses, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a retail store. In fact, I probably would think with the location, it probably wouldn't be a retail store. It most likely would be a small manufacturing firm that would do a niche product that some of these other stores sell. That's my likely guess, just to give you kind of maybe just a picture of what may come someday. If there was something, I think grow facilities also seem to be tapped out from what I understand. I think Councilor Hamlin brought up that point. So from an odor perspective, which the odor regulations are much more stringent than they've ever been, I think it's likely to be some sort of boutique manufacturing place that's looking for a cheap piece of property to put in an area right near some sort of distribution highway. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I understand that. So if that's the case where you're just worried about, daycares, churches and everything, why isn't everything south and west and not near a church on the district? Like, who gets to choose? Why is Dell X'd out? Why doesn't Dell come in under this? Who gets to choose which properties?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to answer.
Go ahead, Brian.
There's a big X in the middle of map C, and that is the largest of the Dell facilities. And the reason is just to the north, there's a daycare. It's adjacent to it.
The property's adjacent.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if, I think I have a feeling it was there before when we did the map originally, but when Mapson did that. But I know that based on regulation, what we have here is
I
the reason,
understood.
that's the reason that came out. The other property there is adjacent to a residential district. So that's the reason that didn't go in there, so. It depending on who you are and what your business is, some people would love to have them in the district, but we wrote the regulations to limit their locations, so.
Okay, all right. I just want to voice that I don't like it. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm wondering do we know if by being in this district, does it increase or decrease people's property values?
Well, I'll speak to this one issue, if you don't mind. I don't know if there's a metric out there to say whether a parcel could improve or disapprove. You'd have to get
Okay.
an appraiser to do that analysis.
Right, okay,
That
okay.
being said, the folks on Grove Street were stunned when their inflated prices of their properties then sold for cash when folks in other businesses bought those properties. So I do think a bettered property with like Daddario and Forge Park or like any of the parcels on Grove Street, those properties are now more valuable than they were before. So I think the stigma of the issue of the use does not equate to worse property values. That's just based on our qualitative experience here in Franklin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Counselor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. All of this really does, in my opinion, having been through many of these overlay discussions, whether it's medical marijuana or if it's biomedical or the variety of different overlay districts that we have. But as it is so much to provide areas typically within our industrial zones and some of our commercial zones to allow the process of relatively simple means if somebody wants to establish this type of a
Right.
business within that zone. It hasn't always come to fruition with that. In some cases it has, in most cases it hasn't. You know, like for instance, I believe, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, the old sewer beds, before they were 99
Condominiums.
units,
Yeah.
was actually an overlay district. We had a biomedical overlay district there, and it just didn't
Do
it
anything.
didn't attract anybody, you know,
Right.
and in the hopes of putting in these overlays is to allow the permitting process and the whole procedures basically easier if somebody wants to go for that type of business. Even though we're including the hotel in this list of items that would be in that overlay district, the market would ultimately determine what would ultimately go there if, say, for instance, Brian put it, the hotel burned down.
Right,
Or-
I know.
or-
I
Or something
understand
of
that.
its uses changes. But our goal has always been to try to provide as much area with an overlay district relative to whatever the overlay might be, just for the simple reason of providing a streamlined process if somebody does in fact want to build that type of business in that zone. And not much, I shouldn't say that, not everything has come to fruition over the years with the different types of overlays that we put in. You know, we have the property on Grove Street that they want to put a friendly 40B, that's industrial. You know, would we like to see that industrial property turned into something industrious? Sure, but it hasn't proven to be a viable property for something that's of an industrial likelihood. So, you know, that's why this 41B came along, this 40B came along. So just because we zone these doesn't necessarily mean that's the future of those.
I know, that's the beauty of zoning.
Exactly. And so what I'm getting at is I really don't have an issue with those three getting added into the zone. And I respect the gentleman's comments in regards to
Okay.
having it next to his. So, but I understand the Dell one. That is a tough nugget though, because yeah, that small property that is immediately adjacent to that, that's a fairly
Right.
significant sized piece of property.
It is,
So
it
if Dell
is.
goes under, which is our second largest tax certificate in the town, it'd be nice to fill it up with something.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Sheridan,
What was
do you
that?
have anything to add? Counselor Frangillo?
Just two quick comments. Thank you for this. I think that there are helpful changes. I appreciate the feedback, but for all the reasons that Councilor Jones just said, I think we want to sort of establish that district, you know, as wide as we can relative to, you know, while still keeping in consideration all the things that we do, residential and churches and daycares and all that. In terms of future uses, my only comment, yeah, I think there is a world where, like, you know, one day, whatever, if we're in 40 years, 30, 40 years, where we actually do become a much more, you know, walkable community that's a little more accessible to people of different price points. It would be nice to have them have a, you know, marijuana option, especially if we, as a society, continue to agree that it can be beneficial to your lifestyle, that we have that within walking distance, right? Currently, they're only accessible by car. That was my only thought, but I don't think that the time, it has to be now or is now. And, you know, even places like these, you know, it's gonna bring traffic, it's gonna bring car traffic, right? That's not gonna be a walkable place. If we're gonna bring car traffic for marijuana, let's have it at the edge of the highways, like we currently do. I think that's fair. The one thought on the just because it came up, the 3%, are we still collecting the 3% excise tax? And I think it does strike me that the possibility of one closing down, and, you know, we don't want to like go and you know, proactively offer less money, but we certainly don't want them to die without us, you know, giving them an opportunity to, you know, save a little. So I don't know. I hope that that's an open line of communication.
We've, so
Jamie?
through you, Madam Chair, so the 3% excise, I hate these terms, because they, with all due respect to the legislature, they really didn't call the term, it's very hard to understand. So I call it the 3% excise sales tax.
I was gonna say sales
okay?
tax. Yeah.
Which is really the local option sales tax.
Yeah.
The council was the first in the state to adopt that right after the law was changed. Those funds go into local receipts.
Right.
So we're seeing that number, you know, now that this next fiscal year in '24 will be the first full year both stores are open. We'll be
Okay.
able to capture, like, what is a year in the life of the cannabis industry in this area. We're also really the only game in the region. So it's a good thing from a retail standpoint, which we need to bolster all of our other retail sectors on this stuff to get people to come to Franklin,
Yeah.
right, and then go back, right? So all the other towns around here have basically prohibited everything almost, couple little things manufacturing-wise. What I think you may be asking for, Councilor Frangillo, is the impact agreements, and the impact agreements have gone away. So
Yeah.
so from your point, which I think you were getting to, both Netta and Boterra are thrilled,
Yeah.
because that is money they do save, that they can put back into the business or reap the profits or be able to operate in an equitable manner like everybody else, and not have this like impact fee attached to it. So those are gone, so they are saving those revenues.
Yeah.
Both operators are really thrilled. We did the same thing Boston did. Boston got rid of all of them right on November 1st, just like we did, because of all the changes in the law that happened. So from a business development, I think both of them are thrilled, and that's helpful for them to be able to stay in business, which allows them to continue to sell products,
Which is
and then the
Right.
customer pays the 3% sales tax.
Yeah.
Right.
Second-
Okay,
second
I-
meals- second
when-
meals tax.
It's like a meals tax.
Right, but I do remember, I think to Councilor Frangillo's point, is that we chose the 3%,
Right.
right? As a town, we got to
Yep.
choose how much up to 3%.
Yep. Local
Right.
option. Yep.
And so I think but it's the customer that pays that tax.
The customer pays the 3%
Right.
excise tax.
Right.
Yeah. It still has an impact on business viability,
It's
but
like a tax on cigarettes.
it's less.
Yeah,
If you had-
it's less for what the business has to pay.
Yeah.
I see another question in the audience, is it okay?
Sure.
Name and address, please.
Rick Ciccone, Chestnut Street. A couple of things crossed my mind. Now, we've already lost one of these marijuana sales. It was a sales place or a grow place. Which did we lose?
Is that,
I think
Jamie,
so
sales place, I think?
Pharmacanis was going to be
Yeah.
at 164 Grove Street. They were going to be a retail operation only
Okay.
Right.
at that site. Medical, actually, I believe it was medical only.
To speak to the gentleman who left, I talked to him outside. I wish I could have got here sooner, but it didn't work out. What happens, I like to play the devil's advocate occasionally, what happens if these places don't make it? Because if we remember correctly, this was a really big deal coming to Franklin, because we like the money, let's face it, town likes the money. But I go by them, well, not a lot, but I go by them. There's 4 or 5 cars. We were gonna have police officers there, we were gonna have this rush to go to the marijuana store. Well, I don't know about you folks, but I know a lot of people, seniors like myself, who still enjoy marijuana. They're not buying at those stores Now, the medical people and the folks who need it, and it's a wonderful thing, the medical industry's gone a long ways with this stuff. But the folks who buy it just to enjoy it recreationally, they are not gonna pay those folks prices. So I see it, just one man's opinion, those places are gonna disappear rather than grow. Maybe the grow industry may continue, but to think that we're gonna have another one up on Upper Union, and I would hope that that won't happen. I would hope that if we were gonna allow another one of these in our town, then we direct him to where this other guy just bailed out of, 124 Grove Street. What was the address, Jamie?
164.
Exactly. So I hope, and I don't think it's gonna happen, because I think this business is going the other way. And I hope whatever money they promised us, we got it locked up real good. And they're gonna have to pay us even when they don't make it, because I don't think they will. And there's a lot more, but I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
a small manufacturing piece, I think.
Jamie?
Through you, Madam Chair. So one of the things about the traffic, just on the parking lots, the pandemic hit, is during the pandemic, if you went back to the planning board traffic studies for Netta and PharmaCann on Grove Street, that's one of the ways we got the MassWorks grant to redo it and the traffic light, because the traffic study showed a lot of traffic. However, during the pandemic, something changed at the state regulatory office, which is that they can now do delivery. So when you order on your app and you get delivery, right, the town still gets the 3% recreational sales tax, but the cars don't come. Win-win,
Right.
right? And so Bellingham has banned almost all cannabis, but they allowed delivery stores to stay open. So all of our operators have contracted with delivery services in Bellingham. So in essence, it's been a business growth, a small one for them. But that's why I think Mr. Ciccone hasn't seen a lot of cars, because people are ordering it on their app. They're not driving down there. They're getting it delivered to their personal house. That's one factor for sure why you see a parking lot that may not have a lot of cars. Also, one of the reasons why you see that is our egregious parking regulations. And so they had to pave a lot of that area on that place down at Netta.
I was gonna say, it's
And-
time to rip it up.
And just for the record, for Mr. Ciccone, and I know he probably knows this, but for the watchers at home, medical users do not pay any of those taxes,
Okay.
okay? So
I
they
didn't
do
know
not
that.
pay medical, if you give a medical card. So Netta is medical, Boterra is not.
Yeah.
So nobody that goes into Boterra, everybody's paying the 3% tax in there,
Okay.
plus the other taxes to the state. But at Netta, it's split. So
Okay.
even a lot of sales out of Netta are medical, so there won't be any tax receipts from that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move zoning bylaw amendment 23-899 to full council.
Is there a second?
Second, yeah.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I
Motion
don't have
adjourned.
I don't have a thing here. I would accept the motion to adjourn. Oh, you
Motion to
said-
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Brian and Amy.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Rick. Be back.